In a world where shadows loom large, Arian felt the weight of his classmates' eyes as he nervously entered school on a rainy morning. The crowded hallways felt like a maze, each step echoing his fears. Yet, in the pages of his notebook, he found a refuge, dreaming of being a brave hero. Little did he know, as he wrote about a warrior rising against oppression, his words would begin to take shape. The first signs of chaos emerged, with shadows swirling around him, hinting at the adventure ahead. The rain poured down, turning the world outside into a blur of gray. Arian stood at the entrance of his school, his heart racing like a wild drum. Each raindrop felt like a heavy weight on his shoulders, reminding him of the eyes that would soon turn toward him. He took a deep breath, trying to steady himself, but the knot in his stomach only tightened. What would they think of him today? As he stepped inside, the bustling hallways echoed with laughter and chatter, but to Arian, it felt like a storm. He squeezed his notebook tightly against his chest, a flimsy shield against the torrent of judgment he imagined awaited him. "Just keep your head down," he whispered to himself, but the words faded against the noise around him. "Look who it is," a voice sneered from behind. Arian recognized it instantly. Derek, the ringleader of his tormentors. "The scribbler! What are you writing today? More silly stories?" Arian felt heat rise to his cheeks. Instead of replying, he quickened his pace, weaving through the crowd, trying to become invisible. He found a small corner near a window, where the rain streaked the glass like tears. This was his sanctuary. He opened his notebook and let the world slip away as he escaped into the realms of his imagination. In this space, he was not Arian the bullied boy. He was Arian the hero. He scribbled furiously, creating a tale of a brave warrior rising against oppression. The words flowed from his pen like magic, filling the pages with a vibrant world where he could be strong and fearless. "If only I could be like him," he thought, lost in his daydream. But as he wrote about bravery, he remained oblivious to the shadows that began to stir around him. They curled and twisted, creeping closer, whispering secrets that only he could sense. A chill ran down his spine, but he brushed it off as just another product of his overactive imagination. Just then, a loud crash echoed through the hallway, snapping him back to reality. Arian's heart raced again, but this time, it was not just from anxiety. The shadows seemed to pulse with energy, swirling around him like a dark storm. He blinked, trying to clear his mind. "It's just the rain," he told himself, but doubt gnawed at him. "Hey, Arian," a familiar voice called, breaking through the chaos. It was Mia, a girl from his art class with bright eyes and a kind smile. "What are you working on?" It's just a story," he stammered, closing his notebook as if it held secrets too heavy for the light. "Stories are important," she replied, tilting her head. "They can change things. You should share yours." Arian wanted to believe her, but fear gripped him. Before he could respond, a dark shadow flickered at the edge of his vision. He turned sharply, but nothing was there, just the swirling rain outside. "I have to go," he mumbled, his voice barely above a whisper. He rushed past her, the shadows dancing menacingly at his heels. As he navigated the crowded hallways once more, the sensation that something was wrong grew stronger. The flickering lights overhead seemed to dim, casting eerie shapes against the walls. Students laughed and jostled each other, oblivious to the unease that filled the air. Arian felt as if he was caught in a dream, where reality twisted around him, blurring the line between what was real and what was imagined. "Arian!" Derek shouted again, this time louder, mocking. "You can't hide behind your stories forever." The words struck hard. Arian's heart raced, not just from fear, but from an unsettling realization. What if his stories were not just fantasies? What if they had power? He shook his head, trying to dismiss the thought, but the shadows whispered louder now, swirling around his feet like a thick mist. Suddenly, A gust of wind swept through the hallway, and Arian felt a chill that went deeper than the cold. He glanced down, and for a split second, he thought he saw shapes forming in the shadows. The words he had written danced in his mind, warning him of the chaos that was about to unfold. As he looked up, a shadow flickered, and for the first time, he felt the weight of his own creation looming over him. As Arian sat in his small room, the rain pattering softly against the window, he felt a wave of nostalgia wash over him. It reminded him of his childhood, a time when stories were his refuge from the harsh realities of school. He closed his eyes and let the memories flow back, like the gentle rain outside. In his mind, he was a young boy again, sitting cross-legged on the floor with his favorite book sprawled open in front of him. The pages were worn, the corners dog-eared from countless readings. "This is where the magic happens," he would whisper to himself, lost in the tales of brave knights and fearless adventurers. He remembered the days when he would weave stories to escape from the taunts of his classmates. They would call him names, their voices echoing in his mind. "Look at Arian, the weirdo," they would sneer. But in his stories, he could be anyone. He could be strong, clever, and courageous. One day, as he sat in the corner of the playground, he overheard a group of children laughing. It stung. "Why don't you come play with us, Arian?" one of them said. But the words felt more like a tease than an invitation. He turned away, clutching his notebook tightly. "I don't need them," he whispered, scribbling furiously about a dragon who had no friends but found strength in its fire. His stories became his shield, a way to cope with the loneliness that often enveloped him. "If only they could see what I see," he thought, imagining a world where he was not just Arian the bullied, but Arian the hero. But as he grew older, the weight of his past experiences began to shape him in ways he did not understand. Memories of isolation loomed large over him. He could still hear the laughter, the whispers, and the mocking voices that often followed him down the hallways. "You will never fit in," they seemed to say. It was during one of those rainy afternoons, while flipping through an old dusty book on his shelf, that Arian stumbled upon a hidden passage. The words glimmered as if calling out to him. It spoke of the connection between emotions and storytelling, a bond that resonated deeply within him. "Your stories are your power," the passage read, "and they reflect the depths of your heart." "What does that mean?" Arian mumbled to himself, furrowing his brow. He could feel the weight of those words pressing against him, urging him to look deeper into his own emotions. Perhaps his stories were not just escapes, but mirrors reflecting his pain and his dreams. He took a deep breath, feeling the air around him shift. "If I want to control my life, I need to face the pain I've buried," he thought, a sense of determination rising within him. Yet, fear clawed at his insides. What if confronting that pain only made things worse? As he wrestled with his thoughts, he heard a soft knock on his door. "Arian, are you in there?" It was his younger sister, Mira. She often brought light into his darker moments. "Yeah, I'm here," he replied, his voice barely above a whisper. She entered, her bright eyes sparkling with curiosity. "What are you writing?" she asked, peering over his shoulder. "Just some stories," he said, trying to keep the truth hidden. Mira smiled, her innocence a comfort. "I love your stories. They make me feel brave. Can I read one?" Arian hesitated for a moment. "Maybe later," he said. "I'm still working on them." "Okay, but remember, you are brave too, Arian. You just have to believe it," she said, her words sinking into him like a warm hug. As Mira left the room, Arian's heart felt lighter. Perhaps he could be brave. Perhaps he could face the shadows of his past and turn them into something beautiful. He opened his notebook once more, ready to write. The rain continued to fall outside, but inside, a new determination began to rise. The stories he created could help him heal. It was time to confront the pain he had long avoided. The chaos at Eldoria High School grew louder and more intense as Arian walked through the hallways. Shadows danced along the walls, whispering secrets of his fears. Just moments ago, he had scribbled in his notebook about a mighty dragon, a creature that could soar above the clouds and breathe fire. Now, it seemed his imagination had come to life in the most terrifying way. In the cafeteria, students screamed as the dragon burst through the doors, its massive wings knocking over tables and scattering lunch trays. Arian stood frozen, his heart racing. He could feel the weight of his classmates' fearful gazes on him. "It's your fault," they seemed to say without words. The dragon roared, and the cafeteria filled with smoke and panic. "Arian, what do we do?" a voice cried out. It was Lyra, the girl from his art class. She looked at him with wide, frightened eyes, but also with a hint of determination. "We have to stop it." Arian's mind swirled with guilt. "I didn't mean for this to happen," he stammered, shaking his head. "I'm just a nobody. I can't control this." "Listen," Lyra shouted above the chaos. "You created this. That means you can stop it. You have to believe in yourself. You are stronger than you think." Her words sparked something inside him. He remembered the stories he had written about heroes who stood up against great odds. But how could he be a hero when he felt so small and afraid? The shadows around him seemed to tighten, feeding on his doubt. As the dragon unleashed a torrent of flames, Arian felt a surge of anger rise within him. "Why did I create this?" he whispered, his voice barely audible. It was a reflection of his pain, his anger at being bullied, and the loneliness he felt every day. He had poured his feelings into his stories, but now those feelings were attacking him and his classmates. "Arian, focus!" Lyra's voice broke through his thoughts. "You can do this. Remember why you write. You have the power to change the story." Taking a deep breath, Arian stepped forward, feeling a flicker of courage ignite within him. "You're right," he said, his voice stronger now. "I have to face this. I will not let my fears control me." Lyra nodded, her eyes shining with belief. "Together, we can find a way. Let's show that dragon who's in charge." With Lyra by his side, Arian summoned all the strength he could muster. He closed his eyes and imagined the dragon, not as a monster, but as a part of himself that needed understanding. "You are a reflection of my pain," he shouted, his voice echoing in the cafeteria. "But I will not let you harm anyone else." The dragon paused, its fiery breath fading as it turned to face him. Arian could see confusion in its eyes, just like the confusion he felt inside. "I am not afraid of you," he declared, feeling the warmth of Lyra's support beside him. Suddenly, a group of shadows emerged, swirling around Arian's bullies, who were frozen in fear. They had tormented him for too long, and now they faced the darkness that he had created. Arian felt a mixture of fear and power. This was his chance to reclaim his narrative. "Stop!" Lyra shouted, stepping in front of Arian. "They need to understand what they've done. You don't have to be cruel to them. Show them the truth." Arian stared at Lyra, realizing she was right. "I can't let anger take over," he thought. "I need to find another way." With newfound resolve, he clenched his fists and took a deep breath. "I will turn this around." As he focused on his feelings, the shadows began to shift, transforming into images of his past. He saw himself as a little boy, alone and afraid, always running from the bullies. But now, he was no longer that scared boy. He was a storyteller, and he had the power to change his story. "Listen," he cried, his voice steady. "This chaos is born from my pain, but I can change it. We can all change it. Let's work together." Lyra smiled, and the other students slowly began to join him, standing beside Arian. "We believe in you," they shouted, their voices ringing with support. In that moment, the dragon's fierce eyes softened. It let out a low growl, and instead of fire, it released a gentle breeze that swept across the cafeteria, clearing away the smoke and chaos. The shadows receded, and the students felt the weight of fear lift. Arian looked around, heart pounding. Maybe, just maybe, he could turn his pain into something beautiful. With Lyra's friendship and the support of his classmates, he could reclaim his story. The battle was just beginning, but for the first time, he felt ready to face it. The air in the school was thick with tension as Arian stood alone in the center of the chaos he had unleashed. Shadows danced around him, and the monstrous creature he had created loomed large, its form twisting and writhing like a dark storm. This creature was the embodiment of his loneliness and despair, and it stared at him with eyes that seemed to bore into his very soul. Arian could feel his heart racing in his chest. He had faced many fears, but this was different. This was a part of him, a reflection of all the pain he had pushed aside. "I can't let this happen," he whispered to himself, his voice barely audible over the roars of the creature. Suddenly, Lyra appeared at his side, her presence a calming force amidst the chaos. "Arian, you can do this. You have to face it," she said, her voice steady. "But what if I can't? What if it's too strong?" he replied, his eyes darting between Lyra and the monstrous figure, which was now closer, its breath heavy and hot. "Remember, it's not just a creature. It's made from your fears. You can control it if you embrace what you feel," Lyra encouraged, her eyes shining with belief. Arian took a deep breath. He thought about all the times he had felt alone, all the moments when sadness had wrapped around him like a heavy blanket. The creature was a part of him, and perhaps that was the key to defeating it. "I have to try," he said, his voice gaining strength. He stepped forward, feeling the shadows swirl around his feet. "I'm not afraid anymore." The creature let out a deafening roar, and for a moment, Arian felt the weight of its darkness pressing down on him. But then he remembered the support of Lyra and the other friends he had made. They believed in him, and he could not let them down. "I am not alone," he shouted, his voice echoing through the hall. The creature paused, its glowing eyes narrowing. Arian could feel a strange connection forming between them. "You represent my loneliness, but I will not let you control me," he declared, his heart pounding with determination. Lyra stepped closer, her hand reaching out toward him. "We are here for you, Arian. Together, we can face this." With her words fueling his courage, Arian closed his eyes and focused on his emotions. He pictured all the stories he had written, the heroes who faced their fears and triumphed against darkness. "I will write a new story," he said, his voice steady. "One where I am the hero, not the victim." The shadows around him began to shift, swirling faster as he embraced his pain. "I am strong. I am brave," he shouted. And as he did, he felt a warmth spreading through him. The creature hesitated, its monstrous form flickering like a candle in the wind. "What are you doing?" it growled, confusion in its voice. "I am turning my pain into strength," Arian replied. "You are a part of me, but you will not define me." As he spoke, he imagined a new narrative unfolding. The darkness that had once overwhelmed him began to shrink, and the creature's form started to dissolve, revealing the lighter shadows within. "I choose hope. I choose friendship," he declared, his heart swelling with newfound courage. With a final, defiant roar, the creature let out a sound that echoed through the hall, and then it began to fade. The shadows that had once threatened to consume him transformed into shimmering lights, swirling around Arian and Lyra. They stood together, their hands clasped, as the last remnants of darkness vanished. The chaos in the school quieted, and Arian felt an incredible sense of peace wash over him. "I did it," he breathed, disbelief and relief flooding through him. "Yes, you did," Lyra said, beaming at him. "You faced your fears and turned them into something beautiful." Arian smiled back, his heart filled with hope. "I guess I'm not alone after all," he said softly, looking around at the friends who had rallied beside him. In that moment, amidst the remnants of chaos, Arian realized he had transformed his pain into a story of resilience, He had learned that by embracing his vulnerabilities, he could rewrite his narrative and inspire others to do the same. As the sun broke through the clouds, a new day dawned for Arian. He walked through the school gates, feeling lighter than he had in weeks. The chaos he had faced was still fresh in his mind, but now there was a flicker of hope within him. With each step, he felt the weight of judgment from his classmates begin to lift, replaced by a growing sense of purpose. In the crowded hallway, Arian spotted Lyra waiting by his locker. Her warm smile made his heart race with gratitude. "Hey, Arian," she called, waving him over. "Are you ready for today?" Arian nodded, his nerves bubbling beneath the surface. "I think so. I just hope they like my stories." He glanced around at his classmates, some of whom had once bullied him. Their faces were a mix of curiosity and uncertainty. "You've got this," Lyra assured him, placing a reassuring hand on his shoulder. "Just remember, your words have power. You can inspire them." Taking a deep breath, Arian opened his notebook, flipping to the page where he had written his new story. It was about a hero who brought people together, a tale woven with dreams of friendship and understanding. "I want them to see what I see," he murmured, "the beauty in our differences." As the bell rang, signaling the start of the storytelling session, Arian felt a wave of anxiety wash over him. He stood in front of the classroom, his heart pounding in his chest. Hi everyone," he began, his voice trembling slightly. "I'm Arian, and I want to share a story with you." The room fell silent, and he could feel their eyes on him. This is a story about a brave hero who discovers the power of kindness. He glanced at Lyra, who nodded encouragingly. Through his journey, he learns that by reaching out to others, he can change the world around him. As Arian spoke, he watched his classmates lean forward, their interest growing. He painted vivid pictures with his words, describing the hero's adventures and the friendships he forged along the way. With each sentence, Arian felt his confidence swell. He was no longer just a boy hiding in the shadows. He was a storyteller, sharing his heart. When he finished, the room erupted in applause. Arian's cheeks flushed with warmth. "Thank you," he stammered, surprised by their reaction. "I just wanted to show that we can all be heroes in our own way." After the session, something unexpected happened. A group of former bullies approached him, their expressions earnest. One of them, a boy named Jake, stepped forward. "Arian, I wanted to say I'm sorry for how I treated you before. I didn't understand. Your story was really powerful." Arian blinked, taken aback. "You mean that?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "Yeah," Jake replied, looking down. "I've been thinking a lot about what I did. It wasn't right. I want to change." The sincerity in his eyes gave Arian hope. Another girl, Mia, added, "We didn't realize how much our words could hurt. Your story made us see things differently. Can you forgive us?" Arian felt a rush of emotions. He remembered the pain they had caused him, but also the importance of moving forward. I think I can," he said slowly, feeling the weight of past struggles begin to lift. "Let's work towards understanding each other." Lyra smiled brightly at Arian, her eyes sparkling with pride. "See? You're already making a difference." As days turned into weeks, Arian continued to share his stories. He organized small gatherings where students could come together to create and share their own tales. The classroom transformed into a vibrant space filled with laughter and imagination. Former bullies became friends, and bonds began to form where there had once been division. One afternoon, as they sat in a circle sharing stories, Lyra turned to Arian. "You've really brought us all together, Arian. I'm so proud of you." Arian smiled, feeling a warmth spreading through him. "I couldn't have done it without you. You believed in me when I didn't believe in myself. And you showed everyone the power of empathy," Lyra replied. "You've changed our school for the better." That day, as they laughed and shared their dreams, Arian realized that he had become more than just a boy with a notebook. He was a bridge between hearts, a storyteller who had learned to weave not just tales of adventure, but also stories of connection and healing. And for the first time in a long while, Arian felt truly at home. The sun shone brightly over Eldoria as the day of Arian's storytelling event arrived. The air was filled with excitement and a hint of nervousness. Arian stood in front of the school auditorium, his heart racing. He had never been the center of attention, but today was different. Today, he was ready to share his voice. "Are you ready?" Lyra asked, her eyes sparkling with encouragement. She stood beside him, radiating warmth and support. "I think so," Arian replied, taking a deep breath. "I just hope everyone likes my stories." "They will," Lyra assured him. "You have so much to offer. Remember how far you've come." As students and parents began to fill the seats, Arian felt a mix of pride and anxiety. He glanced at his notebook, filled with the tales of his imagination, the worlds he had created, and the lessons he had learned. This was his moment to show everyone that he was more than just the quiet boy in the back of the class. When the auditorium was nearly full, Arian stepped up to the microphone. The chatter slowly faded, and he could feel the eyes of his classmates upon him. Hi everyone," he started, his voice shaky but determined. "Thank you for being here today." He looked out at the audience, spotting familiar faces. He noticed some of his former bullies, looking slightly nervous themselves. They had changed, just as he had. "I want to share some stories with you, stories that helped me find my voice," he continued, his confidence growing with each word. Arian opened his notebook and began with a tale about a brave knight who faced a mighty dragon. As he spoke, he painted vivid images with his words. The audience leaned in, captivated. "The knight was afraid, just like I was," he explained. "But he found strength in friendship and courage in himself." Lyra smiled brightly, her eyes shining with pride. She had been cheering him on silently, knowing how much this moment meant to him. As Arian moved through his stories, he shared more than just adventures. He spoke of pain, loneliness, and the importance of forgiveness. "In one of my stories, the hero forgives his enemy," he said, looking directly at the boys who had once tormented him. "He learns that holding on to anger only hurts him more. Forgiveness can heal wounds." A hush fell over the room as his words sank in. Arian could see the impact he was making. The audience was no longer just listening, they were feeling. After finishing his last story, he took a moment to breathe. "Thank you for listening," he said softly. "I want to extend kindness to those who hurt me. You taught me something important about myself. I hope we can all learn from our mistakes and grow together." The room erupted into applause. Arian felt a wave of relief wash over him. His heart swelled with joy as he saw smiles on the faces around him. Even the boys who once bullied him were clapping, their expressions filled with regret and newfound respect. Lyra was the first to stand. "You did it, Arian!" she exclaimed, her voice full of enthusiasm. "You shared your heart, and it was beautiful." Arian stepped down from the stage, overwhelmed with emotion. He had faced his fears and transformed his pain into something powerful. As the event came to a close, the audience began to mingle. Arian found himself surrounded by classmates he had never spoken to before. They approached him with smiles and words of encouragement. "Your stories were amazing, Arian," one girl said, her eyes wide with admiration. "I never knew you could write like that." "Thanks," Arian replied, feeling a warm flush on his cheeks. Slowly, he walked over to the boys who had bullied him. "I appreciate you guys coming," he said, his voice steady. "I hope we can start fresh." They looked at him, surprised. One of them stepped forward. "We're sorry for how we treated you, Arian. We didn't understand what you were going through. Can we be friends?" Arian felt a smile break across his face. "Yeah, I'd like that," he said, feeling the weight of his past lift. As the day turned to dusk, Eldoria seemed to glow with a new energy. Imagination and reality intertwined in a beautiful dance. Arian had transformed into a courageous storyteller who had learned to harness his emotions for good. He realized that sharing his stories not only healed him, but also brought his community together in a way he had never imagined possible. And so, with laughter and newfound friendships, Eldoria thrived, a place where everyone could find their voice in the stories they dared to tell. Share this story if you believe that courage and kindness can transform lives and build bridges between us. Leave a comment about a time when you found your voice in a challenging situation, and subscribe to our channel for more inspiring stories like this one.